But hey, if you have your Bible, turn with me to the book of Mark, chapter 1. Mark, chapter 1. Mark, if you don't know, is in the front part of the New Testament. It's the second book of the New Testament. I call it the action gospel. Mark is the shortest gospel because I don't know if Mark had ADD or ADHD, but that's one of the reasons I love Mark. It is very fast-paced in its writing. He gets through the story quick, man. He skips over a ton of stuff. Like, you don't get the Christmas story in Mark. You get like, Jesus, go to work. I mean, chapter 1 is him picking disciples. All right, so like he gets after it. And so I love this story, but I want to talk to you today as we kick off this series called Sizzling Summer about the reality of discipleship. Hey, how many of you know what discipleship is? Say amen. It's this idea of going deeper with Christ, allowing Christ to take us deeper in his life. But what we're seeing culturally is we're seeing a great divide. And the great divide we see is that some churches claim to be, well, we're not real big on evangelism, but we really love discipleship. And then you see churches on the other side that'll go, no, we're an evangelism church. We're going to go share the gospel, and we're going to win as many souls as possible, but we don't really go that deep. And I believe both are wrong. I believe that you cannot have discipleship apart from evangelism. Because how else will they know unless they hear? And how will they hear unless there is someone to proclaim? That's evangelism. But it is the very first step of discipleship. What's interesting is that in evangelism, the reason people like this so much is because it's from me to you. Like, I want to tell you about Jesus Christ. I want to tell you about Jesus Christ. So it's from me to you so you can hear the message and you can receive the message. The struggle with discipleship is discipleship. Now the weight rests on you to go as deep or as far as you choose to go. No, Pastor Vince, that's the preacher's job. You're going to be so disappointed. Okay? Yesterday, Friday, text my wife Friday morning. I jumped up, getting ready to go. Me and Bren going to hang out. Bren's my 6-year-old. We're going to do the dad thing, which is breakfast somewhere. Then we go through the donut shop to get her donut holes in the back seat of my truck. That's what we do. So I get up, I'm running. Dang it. Hey, babe, have you seen my wallet? Nothing. A few minutes later, nothing. A few minutes later, nothing. So I'm doing how many, guys, you ever lost your wallet? It's a really bad feeling, right? That's right. And so I'm looking around the house. I'm upstairs, I'm downstairs, I'm looking in the truck, I'm looking at the camper. I haven't went camping in a year. How many of you know what I'm talking about? You look at it, like, what's it doing on this popcorn popper? I don't, like, and I'm looking everywhere for it. And finally she texts me back. She's like, I seen it a few days ago. It was in the bathroom on the counter next to your sink. My sink, it's the dirty one. That's my sink. And so, like, that's where, okay. So I go in there, it's not in there, and I'm getting really frustrated. Then I had to send her a text back a few minutes later. I'm like, hey, babe, it was in my pocket. And I am your spiritual leader. Discipleship is a me thing, it's a you thing. Evangelism is, yes, from me to you. Discipleship is from you to God. How deep do you want to go? That's on you. Will I walk with you? Absolutely. I'll go anywhere you want to go. I'll walk with you as much as you want to walk. I'll dig with you. We'll tear open Bible pages. Those are my favorite appointments that I get. People come in with a legal pad. They've been reading their Bible and writing down questions, and we just sit in my office and walk through their questions. It's my favorite appointment because it's us digging into the Word of God. And so I love this idea of discipleship. The problem is we don't know how to define it. What's a disciple? What's a follower of Jesus? Is that all? I mean, there are some things that I would probably follow. There are some things you follow on Facebook. Does that make you one of their disciples? No. I follow like some stuff on there that I'm not a disciple of. It's just really cool when they do stuff. See a video of somebody jumping out of an airplane. I'm not a disciple of jumping out of airplanes. I have no need for that in my life whatsoever. I'll be glad to watch you do it. But I don't need that. Me and Jesus are tight. I don't need to prove it. And so is it just following? What is it? And so Jesus sums it up in one verse. In one verse in the New Testament. It's mentioned in Mark and it's mentioned again in Matthew. Now, they reference it in Luke. A few weeks ago, Pastor Nick preached about Peter being shoved out in the water with Jesus. You go throw your nets in, let's go out into the deep water. And then when he comes out, Peter says, hey, I'm not even worthy to be around you. And Jesus says, hey, come and follow me. That was Luke's perspective of this passage in Mark. Mark doesn't tell the story at all about Peter being pushed out in the water. Like, I feel like that's a big story. And Mark's like, not important. What are we going to get to? We're going to get to what Jesus said. What did Jesus say? Mark chapter 1, verse 17. And Jesus said to them, follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men. Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men. That's it. It's interesting in this passage, even though it's a really short verse, this is an easy one. If you're wanting to memorize some Bible, it's a good one to start on. It's only about 2 lines in the scripture. It's really easy to work out. Follow me. And Jesus said unto them, follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men. But in this one verse, in the one statement of Jesus, follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men, are 3 different stages of discipleship. 3 different stages of discipleship. And the problem is, and I say it's a problem because it's processional. In other words, you got to start one, go through the next one, and end up at the last one. You can't just jump to the end. It's a process. And we all know that there are some things you got to work out in order to finish it, right? Like you can drive to a restaurant, but if you just drive to the restaurant and don't go in, you're still hungry, right? Maybe. Some people drive to the restaurant. You could go in and order your food, but if you don't pick up your food, you're still hungry. You didn't finish the process. Paul says this in the New Testament a little bit later on as he's coming to the end of his ministry. Paul is coming to the end of his life on this earth. And he's writing to a young preacher named Timothy. And as he writes to Timothy, he says this, I have fought the good fight. I have, what's it say? Finished the race. I didn't just do one part of it. I didn't just do the next part of it. I finished the race. I didn't just start someplace and say that's good enough. I finished the race. And much like Paul writes to Timothy and says, I finished the race, Jesus is laying out a race for us to be disciples. He's laying out a course for us to be disciples. And sadly, we get stuck stopping at one of the levels. We get stuck. So what is a disciple of Jesus? If you're taking notes, you can just start it off this way. A disciple of Jesus is, and I'm going to give you 3 things, okay, from this one passage. 3 things from this one passage. The first thing is this. A disciple of Jesus is following Jesus. Mind-blowing, right? You've been waiting all week for that one thing right there. Following Jesus. Follow me is what he says. Follow me. Now here's what I believe. I believe this step right here is where the majority of Christianity sits, not only in America, but worldwide. I'm intrigued by Jesus. This Jesus thing, kind of wild. Like I get the story, love the story that somebody died for me, that somebody took my sin and my shame, and I get heaven. Most of us maybe not even go into that depth with it. We just go, you know what? I'm intrigued. Why? Because there's a way I can go to heaven. Because everybody wants to go to heaven, right? Yes. Like 8 of you do. Let's try that again. Because I'm really concerned. My whole sermon may need to change if that's all that's ready to go. Like everybody wants to go to heaven, right? Okay. Nobody's picking hell. Like nobody's like, well, you know, nobody's doing that. And so we understand that if heaven is that's the thing, like Jesus, heaven. If that's the case, then I'm going to follow Jesus. Why? Because I get heaven. The problem is we miss so much with that mindset. We miss so much with that because what happens is we end up only staying intrigued by Jesus. Curious about Jesus. I mean, it's cool. I mean, I'm going to go to church. I'm following Jesus. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to do some of the things. I might even be in a life group. I might even sing on the worship team. I might engage some of my gifts or some of my talents. Probably at the following Jesus stage, you're just engaged in your talents. Haven't really searched out whether it's a gift or not yet. You're just really, I'm good at this, so I'm going to do this, and I can invest what's easy at the following Jesus stage. It's what our family does on Sundays. We go to church. What do you do on Tuesdays? Well, what does that matter? I'm just asking what your life looks like on Tuesday, or if just Sunday is a thing you do as a family. Because if you're just intrigued, if you're just following Jesus, it's easy to say this. When I first said, Jesus, I'll follow you, I had no idea what that meant. Except that I knew I was supposed to do it, like it was the right thing to do. Why? Because heaven's on the other side of Jesus. And so what happens is we take this step of following Jesus and we start the process and we go, I'm a Jesus follower. And that's really good. And some people are even passionate about following Jesus. And you can tell how passionate they are about staying at that level because they make excuses for everything else they do in their life. And they justify it by saying, I'm a Jesus follower. I'm under grace. I'm forgiven. And as long as I'm just following Jesus, I'm good. And some of you are like, wait, Vince, this sounds weird. Like, aren't I supposed to follow Jesus? Yes. But it's the first step in the verse. I'll follow Jesus. If you're following Jesus, let me ask you, how many of you right now, you don't have to say it, you don't have to raise your hand, but if I were going to ask you, hey, are you a Jesus follower? Most people would go, yeah, I'm here. I was crying. Stephanie's singing her face off up here. I'm crying. Beck over here hitting the high note right over top. Woo, man, it's good. So yeah, I'm a Jesus follower. Let me ask you this. Where's he taking you? Because most of you don't know. I'm sorry, if you're going to follow me, you're going to want to know where we're going first. If I'm going to follow you, I'm going to need to know you got some confidence in your direction, Austin, if I'm going to follow you. But most of us just throw it out there as a statement, not necessarily as this is what I'm doing. It's more of a title than it is a verb. I'm a Jesus follower, not I'm following Jesus. Jesus said, hey, I'm walking this way, follow me. And we go, Jesus, wherever you're at, yay, God. Okay, but I'm going this way. Well, that's a lot. If I go that way, I may have to change my vocation. That's a lot. Where are you going? What steps is he asking you to take? If you're following, these are all conversations you should be having with God. This is the part of discipleship that's not easy. The saying the prayer, the giving your heart to Jesus. I've heard people say this, salvation costs you nothing. It is the free gift of God that happened on Calvary. He took that for you. Salvation costs you nothing. Discipleship will cost you everything. Whoa. Pastor Vince, everything? Newsflash. It was never yours to begin with. So, okay, if that's the first step, well, here's why it's the first step, because it's a head thing. In the mind, we've made a decision to follow Jesus. And you can decide a lot of things in your mind. Like, there's people, man, it'd be awesome to take a mission trip. Mission trip's a good idea. I think a mission trip would be amazing. How many of you have ever been on a mission trip? Hands up, if you've ever been on a mission trip. Those of you that have been on a mission trip, how many of you know that it is life-changing when you go? Like, it's radical what it does to your mind when you step into a world outside your own and see the gospel work. How many of you know a mission trip's a good idea? Some of you don't know. And that's okay that you don't know. But again, it's proof that we've kind of stuck ourselves in this place of just following. Whatever that means. We don't even know how to define it. It's a head thing. Up here, I'm his, he is mine. But something needs to change. And here's how you can tell if someone's stuck in following. When life happens, it all breaks loose. That's how you know. When there's no foundation under. When it gets real shaky. When the first thought is to cut and run rather than to trust that God's got a plan. That's how you know when people are living in the follow level, is because it's so shallow. It's just surface stuff. And you say, Pastor Vince, are you insulting me? No, I'm instructing you, because there were lots of seasons in my life where I lived at this level of just saying, I love Jesus, but I wasn't really doing anything. Because I hadn't, at seasons, I hadn't even moved into the second part of the verse. Jesus said, follow me. Great, got that one. And I will make you become. Second thing, a disciple of Jesus is being changed by Jesus. Being changed by Jesus. This is where it gets a little different. This is where it goes from your head down into your heart, and things got to shift. Like, people should start noticing something different about you. A few weeks ago, Pastor Nick was here, and you guys know Pastor Nick. He preached about Peter, and he told his testimony about having Hashimoto's disease. So when he was leaving, I was like, hey, Pastor Nick. He's like, Vince, is there anything I can pray for you about? I'm like, yeah, man, I need some discipline. He just kind of looked at me. I'm like, no, I know how to pastor. I know how to plant a church. I know how to preach. And I'm not saying that in arrogance. Those are things I just know to do, and I know what time I got to put into it. So I'm pretty disciplined in those areas. But this weight thing is kicking my butt. Like, I'm just not good at it. I said, in fact, I'm kind of an enabler when it comes to this. Like, Jennifer will go on a streak, and she'll be like 3 or 4 weeks without any soda at all. And I'll get in the car, and I'm like, hey, you want Dr. Pepper? Full well knowing she hasn't had one in a month. I'm like, you want one? She looks at me like, are you an idiot? I mean, she does it with Jesus' love in her eyes, but like, I'm like, no, it's cool. It's cool if you don't want a Dr. Pepper, unless you do want a Dr. Pepper. Like, I'm awful, okay? I'm bad about it. And he went, oh, bro, you don't need discipline. And I'm like, you just asked me what I wanted you to pray for me about. I just told you what I wanted you to pray for me about. How this works now is you pray about that thing which you asked me to tell you about. And he was like, you don't need discipline. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm praying for. He said, no, you don't need discipline, Vince, you need clarity. And I'm like, what? I don't need clarity. I know I need to lose weight. He said, that's not the clarity I'm talking about. I said, what's the clarity? He said, the clarity is if you don't lose weight, you die soon and you miss your grandkids. That's clarity. Just hit me, just, oh. But, it hit me here. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Because I know, 2 days ago, I'm in Harps. I'm gonna make dinner for my family. Jennifer's been out helping one of her family members. I'm like, I got this. I'm gonna make dinner. Fried potatoes and smoked sausage, baby. You see where the clarity hadn't quite set in yet? So I'm literally strutting through Harps. I'm like, do, sausage, sausage, sausage. I don't know if there's a sausage song, but I'm singing it because I'm heading that way. Going back there, fried potatoes at home already. I'm gonna throw them back in the skillet, get them good and browned up. Little sausage, it's gonna be good. See a friend of mine I hadn't seen in years. Get in the back. He's like, man, Vince, how you doing? I'm like, I'm good, dude. How are you? I'm good. Family's good, man. Our kids are great. Older kids are gone. Younger kids are still there, but we're praying about it. love them all. Can't wait to see what God does in their life. Got grandbabies now. Got 2 grandbabies. Got little Elena, who every time my black truck pulls in the driveway at her school, she goes, Papa truck, Papa truck, Papa truck. And I'm just telling you, I would run over any of you to get to her when she's saying Papa's truck. Okay, I'm just telling, how many of you know what I'm talking about? Okay, don't feel bad. I would literally run over any of you, okay? And so, like, that, she just, and then Brooks, man, Vanessa's new baby, 10 weeks old now. That little dude, I call him Boss, man. He's awesome. He's smiling, grinning. Woo, it's good. And he was like, man, Vince, good to see you. Those sound like a million reasons to stay healthy. And he walked away. Literally, it was like Jesus completely linebackered me in heart. Boom! I'm standing there holding my Eckrich Farm smoked sausage going, just shaken by the meat market. You know why though? He did that because God doesn't want me to just follow. He wants me changed. He wants me changed. Some of you have been following and you're not stepped into change. You know mission trip's a good idea, but you're not stepped into getting on a plane to the Middle East. You know he's calling you, but you're not stepped into the reality that maybe it's not gonna be easy, but he's calling you anyway. And he's saying, I got something different for you. And Vince, it's right here, but you need this to go from your head down to your heart, or your attitude and your character and your mindset and all those things start to change. It's one thing to hear this song about, whew, man, that new worship song by Elevation /Bethel / whatever else we want to, whatever group you want to throw on it. That song was so moving. Did it move you to change or just to cry? Because I hear it. I wonder when the day comes when somebody doesn't say, whoa, Pastor Vince, you are in my lap all day. That sermon was for me. I'm waiting for the day when it's the week after and someone comes to me and goes, what you preached, I changed this week. I changed it. I didn't just deal with conviction, I changed it. I threw it away. I put the block on my computer. I didn't step into that conversation. I didn't fight over something ridiculous anymore. I stepped into change. Because that's what discipleship takes. Is you can't just think it. You got to step into something different. It all starts to shift your perspective, your mindset, your character. Why? Because Jesus is making you. You're allowing Jesus to make you into something different. Well, that's it, right? We follow and we change. Discipleship. Nope. No. A disciple of Jesus Christ follows Jesus. A disciple of Jesus Christ is being changed by the Spirit of God. And lastly, a disciple of Jesus Christ is committed to the mission of Jesus. I'm going to read you this story. It takes a little bit to get through, but I need you to kind of lean in. It's a fictional story, but I think it's going to probably make some sense to you once we get into it. Now, it came to pass that a group existed who called themselves fishermen. And lo, there were many fish in the waters all around. In fact, the whole area was surrounded by streams and lakes filled with fish. And the fish were hungry. And week after week and month after month and year after year, those who called themselves fishermen met in meetings and talked about their call to fish, about the abundance of fish and how they might go about fishing. Year after year, they carefully defined what fishing meant. They defended fishing as an occupation and declared that fishing is always to be primary task of a fisherman. And continually they searched for new and better methods of fishing and new and better definitions of fishing. Further, they said, the fishing industry exists by fishing just as fire exists by burning. They loved slogans such as fishing is the task of every fisherman. They sponsored special meetings called fishermen's campaigns, and they even had a special month set aside for fishermen to fish. They sponsored costly nationwide and worldwide congress to discuss fishing and to promote fishing and to hear all about the ways of fishing, such as the new fishing equipment, new fishing calls, and whether any new bait had been developed. These fishermen built large, beautiful buildings called fishing headquarters. And the plea was that everyone should be a fisherman and that every fisherman should fish. But one thing they did not do, however, was fish. In addition to meeting regularly, they organized a board to send out fishermen to other places where there were many fish. The board hired staffs and appointed committees and held many meetings to define fishing, to defend fishing, and to decide what new streams should be thought about. But the staff and the committee, they didn't fish. Large, elaborate, and expensive training centers were built whose original and primary purpose was to teach fishermen how to fish. But over the year, courses were offered on the needs of fish, the nature of fish, where to find fish, the psychological reactions of fish, and how to approach and feed fish. Those who taught had doctorates in fishology, but the teachers did not fish. They only taught fishing. And year, after tedious training, many were graduated and were given fishing license, and they were sent to do full-time fishing, some to distant waters which were filled with fish. Many who felt the call to be fishermen responded. They were commissioned and sent out to fish. But like the fishermen back home, they never fished. Like the fishermen back home, they engaged in all kinds of other things. They built power plants to pump water for fish. They bought tractors to plow new waterways for the fish. They made all kinds of equipment to travel here and there to look at fish hatcheries. Some also said that they wanted to be a part of the fishing party, but they felt called to just furnish the equipment. Others felt their job was to relate to the fish in a good way so that fish would know the difference between good and bad fish. Others felt that simply letting the fish know they were nice, land-loving neighbors, and how loving and kind they were was enough. After one stirring meeting on the necessity of fishing, one young man left the meeting and actually went fishing. The next day, he reported that he had caught 2 fish. And he was honored for his excellent catch and scheduled to visit all the big meetings possible to tell how he did it. So he actually quit fishing in order to have time to tell about the experience of fishing. He was also placed on the fishermen's board as a person having considerable experience fishing. Now it's true, many of the fishermen sacrificed and put up with all kinds of difficulties. Some lived near the water and bore the smell of dead fish every day. They received the ridicule of some who made fun of their fishermen's clubs and the fact that they claimed to be fishermen, yet never fished. They wondered about those who felt it was of little use to attend the weekly meetings to talk about fishing. After all, weren't they following the master who said, "Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men"? Imagine how hurt some of these fishermen were when one day a person suggested that those who don't catch fish were not actually fishermen, no matter how much they claimed to be. Yet it did sound correct. Is a person a fisherman if year after year, month after month, and day after day, they never catch a fish? I mean, after all, are we following or are we fishing? You see, Jesus came to Peter and Andrew, and in verse 19, it's James and John. But in verse 18 and in verse 20, they start the exact same way. See, Jesus said, and he answered them, "Follow me, and I will make you become." Follow me. I will change you to become, what's the mission? Fishers of men. There's the call, the change, and the work. And verse 19 or verse 18 says, immediately Peter dropped his nets. Where are we going? Andrew dropped his nets. Let's go. James, John, tell your dad Zebedee, we're rolling out. See you, Dad. We're going. Why? Because they had been called to a mission. I wonder in your life, where have you stopped in the process? Are you just following Jesus and this part's easy? Is the Spirit of God beginning to radically change your heart? Because I'm going to tell you, some of the things are going to be radical. Some of the things are going to be big shifts that He's going to call you to do. He's going to ask you to run your business different. He's going to ask you to run your marriage different. He's going to ask you to lead your kids different. He's going to ask you to do some things that are not normal, because it will be the Spirit of God that changes you. And then He's going to ask you to be about the work. Who are you fishing for? Or are you fishing at all? A disciple is someone who follows Jesus, who is changed by Jesus, and who is on mission for Jesus.